one time that Dean turned around and he said, I really don't like these tarot cards in the house. And I said, they're fine. Like it's whatever, it's fine. And he's like, you don't know what you're playing with.
It is the week leading up to Easter, and I am so excited for some very special Everyday Joy episodes this week. I have been having discussions with some friends and family and different people who have walked totally different journeys with God. And so over the next 5 days, we're going to be hearing 5 different stories of different people's journey of coming to know God. They're almost like little testimony episodes, but the focus is one on the cross and on that moment of them giving their lives to Jesus. But also, it's kind of about what was the lead up? What were the questions they were asking? What were the things they were wrestling with? And who were the people that were impacting their lives that led them to the point of coming to know Jesus? And the stories are all so unique, all so different, and I can't wait for you to hear them. The idea is that you'll be able to share these with friends and family, maybe even people who don't know Jesus, so that you can encourage them and say, hey, so-and-so's story sounds a little bit like yours. You should have a listen and be encouraged by how they've come to know God. So I hope you love this week's episodes. But even before we jump in, I am so excited. Everyday Joy Live is officially happening. This is definitely a behind-the-scenes experience of Everyday Joy. There's a very limited number of seats available. You can get them via the link in the show notes. It's completely free. There's easy, free on-site parking. But I can't wait to see you there. It's going to be such a beautiful day. Let's jump right into today's conversation. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Jess.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to have you here. I met you when you came to our church for a period of time. And I have always thought you have just oozed the joy of Jesus. I think that's one thing that I have always admired about you. Every time I see you, you are oozing his joy, but you have such a passion for God. And I think having people in our world that are like you, who are passionate and on fire for Jesus, is so important because it stirs us on. And you have been that for me, and I know that you've been that for so many other people, Jess. But I'm so happy to have you on.
What an introduction. Thank you so much. That's such a compliment. I've got tears already.
No, it's true though. I think, sometimes we don't know the impact we have on people in short moments. But give everyone who's listening a little bit of context on who you are, what does your family look like, and then we'll jump into a bit more of your story.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so my name's Jess. I am a mother to 2 beautiful children. I homeschool. I am 36 years old, married to a wonderful husband. He recently moved to Melbourne just at the start of last year.
Crazy.
So yeah, we've been across the country. So with my husband's work, we're moving a lot. Yeah, a lot.
How long have you guys been married for?
We have been married 2017, so we're coming up 9 years.
Wow. Yeah. What's the one thing that you love the most about being married, do you think?
He is just the best person I know. And I know everyone says that, but he honestly is my favorite person.
Answer.
It is the right answer, but he's just such a solid rock for me, and he is so calm where I am chaos. He's my person, and no matter what we've gone through, he's just been solid, and he's just so nice. He's just the nicest person.
I feel the same way about my husband. And sometimes I'm like, do you have a flaw? Do you want to be angry sometimes or not cool, calm and collected? I'm yelling and getting frustrated, and he's like, let's just chill out.
It's funny. I met another person recently at church, and she was like, your husband's just the nicest person I've ever met. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But I'm like, but what about me? I'm like, you're too nice to my friends.
That is so good. And you homeschool your 2 beautiful kids. How's that been? What's that experience been like?
Yeah, so I sort of fell into that because of all the travel. So we moved constantly with my husband's work across the state, across the country, multiple times. So I sort of fell into it because I didn't want to be putting them into daycare, pulling them out, putting them into school, pulling them out. And now we just love it. It gives us so much freedom, and the co-ops that we're part of, the fact that I can actually see them learning and see their milestones in real time, it's just, it's
It would be very rewarding to actually be able to watch and see, kind of see when the light bulb goes off.
Yeah, and then they
get
get something, and then it's just like seeing their first steps, but you see it with everything. And I'm just taking it year by year and going off them. But yeah, we're really enjoying the freedom. We're enjoying the friendships, and yeah, I just get to see their little personalities start to shine.
Cool.
Yeah.
They're the sweetest kids.
Yeah, they're literally they're dancing right now outside the studio.
They're in the studio next to us, and they are just such cuties. I'm excited to hear a little bit more of your story because I actually don't know a whole lot of your story. I've heard bits and pieces. You've told me little things here and there, but I'm really excited just to hear a bit of your story. So give me a little bit of context. What was life for Jess like before Jesus? Who were you? What were the things you were wrestling with? Tell me about like pre-Jesus Jess.
Pre-Jesus Jess was a very different Jess. Yeah, I grew up in an atheist household, but they were also to the point a little bit judgmental towards Christians. And being a child, that filters off, like you learn from your parents in the way that they might judge people. And yeah, there was some preconceived ideas about Christians that were passed on. And so I always thought, who would want to be a Christian? Like it just wasn't the path at all. But at the same time, I did have family members in my family that were very spiritual in other ways. And so I had a grandparent that was getting visions, vivid visions. A lot of the time they weren't nice visions. So, and then she was also able to astral travel. So this is very new age practices.
Wow.
So she had never left New Zealand in her entire life, but she had traveled across the globe and she could tell you detailed areas, street names, cafes, the lot. So spiritual in that sense, but not spiritual in a God sense. And that I could clearly see has passed down generationally through my family. So that was sort of a little bit of a doorway, I guess, a gateway for me, is like I had a very spiritual family. And it was around the age of 20 that a roommate of mine actually wrote me into going and getting a psychic reading. And before then, I was like into horoscopes and, talking to the universe, saying the universe was going to provide. And then I got roped into this psychic reading, and it was the most accurate reading I've ever had, like to the day. So that was the start, because then I was constantly every year.
You were like, well, this is true.
I was like, and everything that she said did come true. But I can see that the enemy's hand was on it now, because looking back, I'm like, that was his way to go, okay, we'll give her one really good reading and then she'll be ours and then all the rest won't matter. And it felt like that, because every other reading that I got after that was just, it didn't resonate. And then if they said one thing, the opposite would happen. But it literally was my doorway. So that was like psychic readings, and then I got into tarot cards.
And do you think you were looking, did you have a sense of like, oh, I want to know more? Like what do you feel like the emotion or the feeling or the answer you were looking for was?
I think there's so many people that are in that spiritual realm, new age movement particularly, that are searching for more and they want to know the truth. And that is ultimately what led me to God. But they want spiritually, they're not being fulfilled, and they just keep trying different avenues to try and get that fulfillment. But it never ever comes, and it's never what you expect it to be either. Yeah. So that you're constantly chasing something and not receiving anything, which is pure enemy tactics, isn't it?
So you get to this point where you getting these readings, you're like, this isn't necessarily resonating, so now I'm jumping and trying other things. What kind of happens from that point?
Yeah, so then like I got into tarot cards, trying to, talk to the universe about providing and manifesting things myself. And then that would lead to like Reiki sessions. I've had past life regression sessions, which is full hypnosis, which again is completely not the type of spiritual fulfillment that you want. And yeah, I never really saw a problem with it. I always thought that I was just a really nice person and that it didn't matter. Like I was still nice and friendly and respectful to people, and I was, a good citizen. Like I'm like, it's fine. Like my life is fine. And yeah, I think it really turned after I had kids. So to give you context, my husband grew up Christian. He came from a Christian household. incredible Christian parents. And when I met him, he told me that he was Christian, but he wasn't necessarily living out being a Christian. You know, he didn't have a Bible in the home. In the 13 years we were together before I came to Christ, he never went to church. We never spoke about God. I had never heard him pray. So like I was like, oh, he's a Christian, but he's different. Like I just put him in this different box. And there was one point in time, we had 1 year where my daughter got really, really sick and she was in and out of hospital with asthma. And it was the one time that Dean turned around and he said, I really don't like these tarot cards in the house. And I said, they're fine. Like it's whatever, it's fine. And he's like, you don't know what you're playing with. Like you don't know what you're summoning pretty much. Like you don't know the extent of. So he could obviously sense it and he was praying against it. And I thank God that he was covering our family in that season because he knew he couldn't push me to get to know God because I was and I am still very strong-willed. Yeah, but it just completely changed, I guess, this feeling like we were on completely different pages with our faith and spirituality. So then we were moving. So my husband actually got a 6-week contract in Tasmania and we were like, this is great. We've never been to Tasmania. We'll go 6 weeks, go with the kids, explore. It'll be fun. And so we left and we were in a little Airbnb. And the moment that we arrived, we get to this Airbnb and it's actually a renovated old church. And it's got the peaked ceilings, the stained glass windows, and it was just so beautiful. And I was like, oh, this is really nice. Like, this is cozy. And then the following week, I went to the visitor centre in Penguin and I was like, give me all the things we can do around the area. We're only here for 6 weeks, you know, hikes, Cradle Mountain, all the things with the kids. And the first thing that this visitor centre passed me was a piece of paper and it had a list of churches in the area. And I was like, what? Like,
this
what?
could surely not be the best thing you've got.
I was like, what is this? This is so random.
Anything else?
And like, I remember thinking like the old me would have just been like, oh, no, thank you. But for some reason, I picked up the list of churches along with all the other stuff they gave me. And I brought it back to our little church Airbnb and it just sat on our table for, I think, a couple of weeks. And then not long after that, I remember taking my dog for a walk out in the morning and I'd see the beautiful sunrise. And then it hit me. It was like a Dropbox thought, get to know God. And I was like, that. I've never once ever had that thought in my life. I'm going to ignore it. I'm like, that's not me. Like, and I knew it wasn't me because I was like, I wouldn't have had that thought like that. That is random. And then it would come back, get to know God. And it was like these slow little nudges. And then it was coming so often that I was like, okay, I'm going to have to tell someone. And so I went to my best friend. I didn't go to Dean. I was like, I'm going to my best friend. And she had recently come back to Christ in 2020. And so I knew that I could talk to her. And she was like, I'm so excited for you. She's like, have you told Dean? And I was like, no. She's like, you got to tell your husband. And so I went back to our little church home and I remember doing the dishes and I turned to Dean. I was like, oh, I've got something I really want to tell you. And he was like, yeah, okay, cool. And I said, yeah, I keep having these thoughts. And you could see Dean was a bit like, oh, okay, like what's going on here? And I was like, the thought is that I need to get to know God. And my husband's face just shone. Like, it was the most happiest face I've ever seen, and including our wedding day, which is still the best day of my life. His face was so excited and he just said, I'm so happy for you. And then he said, I knew this day would come. And he said, I won't push you, I won't do anything, but I'm so excited for you. And yeah, so then the next day I was like, if I'm going to get to know God, I need to get to know God, like what it is that Christians stand on. So I find myself ordering a Bible on Amazon. And I'm like, I'm going to read this and I'm going to nitpick it and I'm going to pull it apart. And by the end of it, I'm not going to want to know anything about God. Like, he's saying get to know God so that I can read the Bible and reject God. That was what I was thinking. And so it arrives and I start reading and I have questions. A lot of questions. And I'm asking Dean, I'm like, why are people living to 900? Like, you expect me to believe people are living to 900 years old. And then I'm like, this isn't fair about, like, you know, he worked 7 years for her and then he ends up with the older sister, and that's not fair. Like, if God is a loving God, why would he do that? That's not fair. And a lot of these questions I was bringing up, Dean was like, like, this is so good. Like, you're reading your Bible. And he's like, I don't know the answers. He's like, I haven't read the Bible. And he's like, you need to talk to someone. I'm like, well, that's it. We got to go to church. And same thing, we were driving to this church and I said to Dean, we're probably only going to go this once and then we're never going to talk about it again.
I love that you were like, just so you know.
Just so you know, like, and then we're never talking about this again. And we arrive and I said to Dean, we're sitting right at the back because we need a quick exit in case things get weird. Because I had such a preconceived idea about Christians being judgmental and I don't even know how to explain it. Just the wrong idea of Christians, really. And I think it is because Christians do live their life so differently to a lot of other people. We have God as that anchor for our morals and actions. And so it does. Christians do act differently. So I went in with such a guarded heart and I just remember being so loved on. Like there were about 8 people as soon as we entered the building that just loved on us. And I was like, why is everyone so nice? Like, I don't trust them. I was so skeptical. And then we sat right at the back and that service was 3 people sharing their own testimonies. And one of them just really hit home. And I honestly felt like my heart was cracked open and Jesus was just pouring his love in. And it was like I'd been singled out. Like I was like, nobody in that entire congregation mattered. I was like, I'm the one. Like he's picked me today and that's what's happening to my heart. And then I was like, okay, I think there's something to this. Like I think there's a reason why I got that calling, why we're in this church, and I need to keep reading my Bible. And so I kept reading, I kept having more questions, and then there was an absolute angel at that church called Lee who opened up the church every week for me and my kids. They would go and run on the playground while I asked her all of my questions, and she just dissected the Bible for me. And some questions she couldn't answer. You know, there's a lot that we have to carry very loosely in our hands and just wait until we see the big man ourselves to get answers for. But it was just having that space to really dive in. And then I remember I came home back to the Airbnb. So for context, we were only supposed to be in Tasmania for 6 weeks. My husband's contract kept getting pushed out. And by this stage, we'd been in Tasmania for 6 months.
Wow.
And I remember going back to our Airbnb and I went on my knees on the bed and I just said, okay, this is the point where I either believe what I'm reading and what I've learned, and it is that leap of faith to get to the point where it's like, okay, I believe this now. I'm gonna have that faith and believe. And I remember being on my knees and just being like, Jesus, I love you. And I said those words and it's like that whole feeling of love again. And I was like, okay, this is it. Like this
the real deal.
You can't take away that truth and that feeling and that release of burden and just knowing. I'm such a truth seeker too. And I feel like a lot of people that are on that spiritual journey are wanting the truth. And then once you get a glimpse of it, you're like, that nothing else compares. Nothing else compares. So yeah, it ended up, again, Dean's contract kept getting pushed out. And then they were holding baptisms at this church. And I said, I want to be baptized. So it was late August and I finally got baptized. And 2 days later, Dean got a finish date for the job. So I always say,
it's like it got new.
He knew. And he was like, I have a feeling he had to take me away from like city and like a lot of people. Tasmania is so quiet and beautiful and you're just surrounded by nature. And I feel like I really needed that to be able to actually hear his voice, first of all, and be taken away from, you know, people to really plug into him. And he wouldn't let me leave that island until it was finished with me being baptized. Like it was like, no, you're staying until we get this done. Yeah. And
wow.
Yeah, it's just been incredible since.
So cool. What do you think the biggest change in you has been since being like, no, like Jesus, you are my savior? Like what do you think's been the biggest change in your world?
I think the release of fear is a huge one. And I think a lot of people still carry it today. But I just walk in such peace because I just know this life is fleeting and all I'm looking at is eternity. And when you've got that kind of peace, it changes your entire life. You know, like even especially with kids, young children, bringing up young children, all the things happening in the world. I just have this peace. I'm like, Lord, these children were yours first. You placed them in my womb. Like, yeah, I've just got peace, complete peace.
Wow.
And that, you know, fear is gone. It's like the most repeated phrase in the Bible is do not fear. So yeah, that and I feel like solidifying the family. So now that obviously my husband and I are on the same page faith-wise, I just feel like our entire family dynamic changed. Like we are so solid. Not that we weren't solid before, but just this whole new element of just having this beautiful family under God's grace. Yeah.
Man, that is incredible. Like I got a bit like emotional a few times when you were talking, because I think like once you've experienced the love of God, and like I'll probably cry if I talk about it, but when you know the love of God and you've encountered his love and you know that there is nothing you can do, that there is nothing that can separate us from him. I get this sense of like awe and gratitude for God, because I go, how on earth could you have done all of this for me, for you? And I think that, you know, hearing your story, I think one of the things I loved is how curious you were and asking questions. And you were saying to me when we were off mic that you're now leading groups and you're encouraging people who are maybe atheist right now. Is there a question that you would want to, that you would almost say is like something that you were asking a lot, or maybe people in your group are asking a lot as someone who, you know, at a time didn't believe, or someone who hasn't believed? Is there a question that you're like, find the answer to this, like go on the journey finding the answer? Or is there like is there something that you would encourage people who are kind of in that place that you were in, where you had that first prompting?
I highly encourage reading the Bible, because that is the living, breathing word of God, and it is never the same. So I'm on my 4th year now reading the Bible, and every single year I get something new out of it. And it is something that you can read just on face value, you know, just read the story. But then there's stories upon stories upon stories just on that one story. You know, you go a spiritual level deeper and another spiritual level deeper. And I just encourage everyone to read the Bible and actually get to know God and how gracious he is too. Like he meets us where we're at. He is so forgiving. Getting in the word and then plugging into a good church, because I feel like you need, especially as a new believer, you need that community and you need a church so that you can actually understand the context of what you're reading, because it is a different time, especially that Old Testament. And you're like, what on earth were they doing? Why were they doing this? And going and listening to sermons actually gives you context. So plugging into a really good church and community, having godly friendships is life-changing.
And I think what you did as well, like asking questions, like if there is someone in your church or someone who has a faith that's near you, or even if you don't know them, literally go to a church and ask an old lady in the front row. Like it doesn't matter who you, but like we would encourage you, like find someone and ask those questions. Don't be intimidated. It doesn't matter if you literally know nothing. Simply get curious. And pick it apart. Like I encourage people with this Bible study, I just say like put everything in there. There's no wrong question. There's no silly question. They're all valid, because it is like a really big concept, I guess, for a new believer to come around and put your faith into. You know, you're learning of these things of like Noah and Ark and like the flooding of the world, and you're like, really? And you're like, no, really. So cool.
But yeah, like get into it and pick it apart and pray. Pray is so big, like, and just having that conversation with God, like, okay, show me what you mean. Show me something in the Bible.
So cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I loved hearing your story, and I know it's going to encourage so many people. I'm so proud of you, and I think this is the beginning of some cool things for you.
Yeah, I know so. God's always got a plan.
Can't wait to chat to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the podcast. I hope that it encouraged you, that it's helped you through, and that it helps to challenge you through the season of life that you're facing, uplift you if you're feeling down. And most of all, I pray that you're able to draw closer and closer to God. I'm so excited to keep diving into the Word of God with you. I pray you're able to find moments of joy.